the U.S. Navy, particularly in World War II. You see, way back when, in the 1920s, they had something called prohibition, where they said nobody's allowed to drink alcohol. So all the big old bars around the country decided that they were going to become ice cream parlors overnight. That means that the entire generation that fought in World War II was raised on ice cream parlors. Everybody goes down to the ice cream parlor every day, every week. All right? So they all love ice cream. Now, it actually becomes very important to all of these guys who are fighting in the war as the morale booster. It's really, really necessary for them to have ice cream as part of their rations. So important, in fact, that when the USS Lexington is sunk in the Battle of Coral Sea, before that ship goes down, all of her crew break into her ice cream lockers and just start stealing all the ice cream. And there wasn't a drop of ice cream left in those. They all take it out, and their guys in the lifeboats eating it out of their helmets. So, ice cream's really important. Now, if you were a big ship, you actually have ice cream makers on your ship. So if you're a battleship and aircraft carrier, you can come on in and listen to the story. We just got started. Thank you. Yeah. So if you're a battleship or an aircraft carrier, you have ice cream makers. And you can just give it out to your crew whenever. But if you're a little ship, like a destroyer or a cruiser, those escorts, they actually don't have their own ice cream makers. They have to get it from someone else. Now, we had a few barges that go around making it, but those happen to only be in one place at a time. So generally, you would get it from whatever your big capital ship was, the center of your task force. So the easiest was for the destroyers to get it from carriers. They really liked carriers because they could do something called plane guard, where you sit behind the carrier and there's some pilots on it, they fly off, they shoot down enemy planes, and then when they come home, they have to land back on the carrier. And they think they're really cool, but sometimes, I'll give you a secret, they make mistakes. All right? Sometimes they miss their landing into the water. Sometimes they just run out of fuel into the water. Sometimes they get shot down by an enemy aircraft into the water. And if that pilot is all right, then the carrier is way too important to stop for him. So they're just going to keep on sailing. But the little escorting destroyer, he can go over and pick up that pilot, and he can give him back to the carrier in exchange for one ration, 10 gallons of ice cream. Now, the destroyers really like this arrangement because, hey, free ice cream. They even joked about shooting down some of their own pilots just to get the ice cream out of them, you know? But the pilots really didn't like that arrangement. Not because they ever got shot down, as far as I know that didn't happen. Not by us anyway. But because after all that time in flight school, all those years training to become a super cool aviator, they're only worth 10 gallons? That's not that much. So, cut to 1944, the Battle of the Philippine Sea. This is actually the largest carrier battle in history. We send up more than 500 aircraft against the Japanese, who send up more than 800 aircraft against us. We end up shooting down a lot more Japanese aircraft, so much so it's called the Great Philippines Turkey Shoot. But, that being said, we actually sent out our last attack way too late, way too far. Our pilots are coming back home at night out of fuel. A lot of them are going to end up in the water, and we know it. The admiral in charge of our fleet, Mark Mitcher, actually decides to make a very risky play. He turns on the lights of all of his carriers. That makes them a beacon at nighttime for all of his pilots to find their way back, but it also makes them a beacon for any enemy submarines lurking in the area. Luckily, the risk does pay off. There aren't any Japanese submarines around. He doesn't lose a carrier, but a lot of the pilots still need some place to land. They're finding any flight deck, not necessarily the one they came off of. And so they're landing left, right. A lot of them are missing their landing. A lot of them are running out of fuel. And pilots are ending up in the water everywhere, along with a big old breadcrumb trail of pilots all the way back to the Japanese carriers. The guys who got shot down or ran out of fuel before they got home. So, luckily, one of our best ships, the USS Enterprise, actually accounts for all of her pilots. All of them managed to make it back home, landing on either her flight deck or a different carrier. But, all except one. This guy's name is William Kane, call sign Killer. And he's actually very important to the Enterprise for 3 reasons. First, he's the commander of their air group. So without him, they don't plan missions, they don't fly missions. Second, he's a skilled ace in his own right. He shot down a whole bunch of Japanese planes. And third, he's just a great guy. He's part of their crew. He's a friend. They want him back. They want to see him home alive. So, Enterprise puts out a search. They say, everybody, look for William Kane. So they go through the standard search procedure. 2 days, 2 nights, and they don't find him. And they got to move on to the next mission. There's a war going on. So as the task group is pulling away from the Philippine Sea, they're heading on to the next spot, and a destroyer pulls up alongside Enterprise with a routine message. And then everyone on Enterprise smiles, because that message was not as routine as they thought. It flashes, how much ice cream is Killer Kane worth? They wanted 25 gallons. Problem is, it only comes in those 10-gallon ration drums, so they had to give them 30. And that's the story.